Hey guys, tonight we are going to slip into boots that are stiff with frost and caked with mud, and we'll shuffle forward into the howling wind of the Eastern Front. You're not watching some Hollywood film where the heroes miraculously keep their uniforms pressed and their rifles polished. No, this is the Red Army in winter, and you're there, swaying already, because the only thing keeping your body moving at this hour is a ration of vodka you clutched so tightly it feels like part of your hand. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love seeing the world come together in these strange bedtime travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The snow is the first enemy you notice. It isn't fluffy or gentle, it's more like shards of glass swirling into your face. Your greatcoat is already stiff with frost, and each breath feels like it's shaving the inside of your throat. You trudge forward in formation, but truth be told, you're not marching like a hero. Your feet drag, your legs wobble. The vodka you drained before stepping out of camp gives you a strange mix of warmth and dizziness, like you're floating half an inch above the frozen earth. The truth is, Soviet soldiers on the Eastern Front really did receive vodka rations, commonly known as the People's Commissar's ration. Officially, it was 100 grams a day. Unofficially, well, sometimes a little more, sometimes less, depending on supply. The state said it was to keep spirits high, to warm you up, to make you braver. And you, right now, clutching your rifle with gloved fingers that don't quite obey, believe it's the only way you can keep walking. Your comrades beside you are in the same state. Some shuffle quietly, eyes glazed. Others mutter songs, patriotic lines that come out slurred. One guy near you keeps shouting jokes that nobody laughs at. It's hard to tell whether it's the vodka or the cold making everyone's faces so red. You wonder if Stalin himself imagined this sight, an army of staggering half-dazed men pushing westward through snowdrifts, chasing the ghost of victory. The cold bites everywhere. Your boots are lined with straw instead of proper soxius. That was common practice, and still your toes feel brittle, as if they might snap if you stubbed them against a rock. You take another swig from your tin flask, and the burn travels down your throat into your chest. For a moment, the numbness feels like relief. For another moment, you even feel stronger. But then the dizziness creeps back, and your steps grow uneven. Historians still argue whether vodka truly helped morale, or if it sabotaged combat effectiveness. Some records show soldiers performing braver acts, charging into impossible firefights under the warm haze of drink. Others insist the ration caused more friendly fire, more mistakes, more sloppy discipline. You, here in the snow, aren't thinking about debates in archives. You're thinking about how much heavier your rifle feels when your head is light. The march stretches on. Hours feel like days. The wind screams, and each time you try to glance at your comrades' faces, snow blinds your eyes. Somewhere far ahead, artillery thunders those dull, distant thumps you've learned to recognize as both warning and promise. You know the Germans are out there, dug into villages and forests, waiting. The vodka swirls in your veins, convincing you that maybe you're ready for them. Maybe. Every so often, you pass the body of a horse collapsed in the snow, stiff legs jutting out like frozen sticks. You can't help but laugh, because in your state, everything feels absurd. A war fought in conditions where even animals give up. Somewhere inside, You wonder if you're next, but the laughter keeps you moving. There's a comrade just behind you, singing a folk song about springtime. His voice is cracked and slurred, but the tune drifts over the crunch of boots. The irony isn't lost on you. Spring feels like another planet. You joke to yourself, if I make it to spring, I'll quit vodka forever. You won't, but it's a nice thought. As daylight wanes, your unit finally halts to regroup. You drop onto the snow with relief, back resting against a half-buried log. The vodka has dulled the stabbing pain in your feet, though you know frostbite is lurking there, ready to surprise you in the morning. You watch your comrades fumble for cigarettes, match flames trembling in the wind. Someone passes you a hunk of bread so stale you could use it as a weapon. You laugh against second joke of the day. We could build bunkers with this bread. No one replies. They're too tired, too cold, or too drunk to care. Here's a quirky detail. Many soldiers on the Eastern Front learned to light cigarettes using burning strips of German propaganda leaflets. The paper burned better than damp matches, and it felt ironic to inhale smoke from Hitler's words. You do the same now, torching a leaflet you found stuffed in your boot. The ash floats away on the snowstorm, and you suck in a lungful of bitter smoke. It makes your head spin, but then again, so does everything. As night deepens, orders arrive to dig shallow trenches for shelter. You and your comrades scrape at the frozen ground with shovels that clang uselessly against ice. Your breath steams, your hands shake, but the vodka keeps you from caring too much. You think, this is how we'll survive, barely, and as you collapse into the shallow pit you've carved, you clutch the bottle close, more precious than your rifle. Somewhere beyond the snow and the dark, the German lines wait. But for tonight, it's just you, the vodka, and the endless cold. And maybe, just maybe, you'll wake up tomorrow and keep marching. The morning doesn't really arrive. Out here, dawn is more like a slow, gray smear across the sky, as if someone dragged a dirty rag over the horizon. You blink your eyes open, and the first sensation isn't the cold, it's the sour burn of vodka from last night still coating your tongue. Your flask is half empty, and you clutch it like a relic. You know you shouldn't drink yet, but also, what else are you going to do? Coffee, that's a luxury for another planet. Here vodka is both shield and punishment. You tip the flask and let the liquid slide into your throat. It burns all the way down, then spreads warmth through your chest like a tiny stove. For a few seconds, it feels almost magically. Your fingers tingle, your head lightens. You can even smile, but just as quickly, the warmth fades into dizziness, and the cold seeps back in. The truth is, the vodka doesn't actually heat you. It just tricks your nerves. Your grandmother would have said it's like paying rent with borrowed money. It works for a moment, then leaves you worse off. Still, you convince yourself this ritual is survival. Every day on the Eastern Front begins with the same calculation: bread or vodka. There's rarely enough of both, and lately, the bread is just crumbs, but the flask is steady. You've even noticed officers handing it out before food. Liquid courage, they say with thin smiles. Some historians claim this was deliberate, a way to keep the Red Army moving despite impossible conditions. Others argue it was desperation. Vodka was one of the few things the Soviet state could actually deliver in quantity. And you're the walking, staggering proof of the policy. Your comrades join you in the ritual. The man beside you shakes his flask, frowns at the hollow rattle, then licks the rim as though hoping for one last drop. Another soldier grins at you, his teeth cracked and yellow, and says, "Comrade, vodka is better than boots." You laugh, even though both of you know it's true. Your boots are splitting at the seams, but at least your flask is intact. It's a curious paradox. The vodka makes you brave enough to step into no man's land, yet clumsy enough to risk tripping on your own rifle. You notice this firsthand when the company gathers for orders. A lieutenant with a stern face reads instructions, but his words tumble into the air like puzzle pieces. The vodka haze makes them rearrange themselves in your head. You nod as though you understand, but really, you're thinking. Another drink will help me concentrate. Spoiler, it doesn't. There's a lesser known detail you catch in moments like this. Many Soviet soldiers actually traded their vodka rations to medics for bandages or morphine. You've seen it happen. Once, you swapped half your ration for a roll of cloth to wrap your frostbitten fingers. You regretted it instantly, of course, and spent the rest of the night begging sips from others. But it's proof that even addiction bends when survival shouts louder. The column moves again. This time, you're not trudging through pristine snow, you're slogging through churned mud that freezes, then thaws, then freezes again, like a cruel cycle invented by someone who hated boots. The vodka in your belly sloshes, making you sway side to side. At one point, you nearly topple into the muck, and a comrade grabs your arm. He doesn't scold you, he just whispers, "Save it for the battle, brother." You nod solemnly, pretending you'll listen. And the battles do come. Every day blends into the next, but the rhythm is predictable. March, freeze, drink, fight, drink again. When the shells start, your instinct isn't to duck, but to swig. You believe, absurdly, that vodka makes shrapnel miss. You press your flask to your lips as the earth shakes. And though you know better, the illusion is comforting. Here's where historians still argue. Did vodka truly reduce fear, or did it just mask it with illusion? Some veterans swore the drink gave them strength to storm German trenches. Others recalled friendly fire incidents when drunken soldiers fired wildly in panic. You stand in the middle of this debate, shaking hands, blurred vision, half courage, half madness. The rest of the day unfolds in fragments. You remember stumbling through a village reduced to rubble, walls leaning like drunks themselves. You remember a comrade trying to milk a frozen cow while laughing hysterically. You remember tipping your flask upside down, watching the last drop glisten before it disappeared, and feeling a wave of despair so sharp it almost sobered you. Almost the night brings no peace. You huddle in a dugout, knees pulled to your chest, and listen to your comrades mumble half songs, half prayers. One man insists vodka helps him dream of home. Another insists it keeps frostbite from spreading. You smile at both lies because you've told them yourself. In truth, the drink is both your armor and your captor. You can't imagine surviving without it, but you can already feel how deeply it's carving into you. Before you close your eyes, you make yourself another promise. Tomorrow, you'll drink less, rely more on your own strength. But you know how that ends. Dawn will come, gray and cruel, and your hand will already be reaching for the flask. The order comes down the line before breakfast. Prepare for distribution. Everyone knows what it means. The chatter in the trench perks up, eyes brighten, and for a brief moment the hunger in your stomach seems less urgent. The vodka ration is about to arrive, and that promise is enough to make hardened soldiers shuffle like children waiting for candy. You press your back against the frozen earth and wait your turn, feeling the familiar anticipation coil in your gut when the commissar finally appears. His greatcoat, stiff with frost, he carries a battered metal container and a stack of tin cups. The ritual is efficient. One by one, soldiers step forward, cups held out like parishioners in church. The commissar pours exactly one measure, 100 grams, no more, no less. The liquid catches the weak morning light, clear and sharp, a reminder that the state gives you fire when it cannot give you food or warmth. You step forward and receive your share. The cup shakes in your hands, not from fear of battle, but from the craving. You tip it back, and the vodka scorches your throat, racing into your stomach like liquid lightning. You exhale steam and feel a rush of heat, artificial but convincing. Around you, comrades sigh, grin, or belt out short songs in gratitude. Someone mutters, "To victory," and the toast echoes down the line. Here's the thing, this daily ritual wasn't just tolerated by commanders, it was encouraged. Historians often cite Stalin's 1941 decree authorizing the vodka ration as a morale booster. The logic was simple. Soldiers half frozen, underfed, and terrified might collapse without it. But there's debate, even now, about whether it was genius or folly. Did it truly fortify the Red Army, or did it simply create legions of staggering men half aware of their surroundings? You, cup in hand, are the living experiment. As the morning wears on, you notice discipline bending around the edges. A few men sneak back into the line, tilting their cups for second helpings. The commissar pretends not to see he's had his share too. After all, others pour their ration into bottles hidden in greatcoat pockets, saving it for later or for barter. You, of course, drink yours immediately. Patience is not your virtue. The effect is almost instant. When orders come to repair the trench wall, you leap into the work with clumsy enthusiasm. The vodka makes you feel capable, stronger than you really are. You shovel dirt with exaggerated energy, grinning like a fool, while your sober comrades shake their heads. By midday, though, the warmth fades and the familiar fog creeps back in. Your arms feel heavier, your back aches, and you slump against the earth. Convinced you've worked harder than anyone, there's a quirky detail about these rations you've learned. Sometimes, when supplies faltered, the vodka was diluted with water. Soldiers could always tell. They'd complain loudly, sometimes even refuse the ration, though refusing was rare. You once joked that watered-down vodka was more dangerous than German bullets. It could cause riots faster than enemy fire. Today, at least, your ration tasted pure. The afternoon drifts into routine. A patrol goes out, rifles at the ready, boots crunching through snow. You volunteer, partly because you're brave, partly because the vodka makes you reckless. Out in the open, the cold hits harder, but you barely notice. Each shadow looks like an enemy, and each gust of wind feels like a challenge you're eager to accept. Your comrades mutter that you're moving too loud, but you laugh it off, whispering, "Let the fascists hear me coming." It's bravado, not strategy. When the patrol returns without incident, you're hailed as a fool and a hero at once. One comrade slaps your shoulder and says, "Vodka makes you fearless, brother." Another scowls, insisting you nearly got everyone killed. Both are right. You smile and accept the contradiction. That as evening falls, the routine repeats. Another ration, another round of toasts. This time, the jokes get darker. Someone raises his cup and says, "To frostbite may it take the toes we don't need." Laughter ripples, but it's the kind of laughter that hides despair. You sip your share, feeling the burn in your chest, and pretend the joke is funny. Here's where the scholarly debate rears its head again. Was vodka truly a tool of control? Some argue the ration wasn't just for morale, but also for manipulation. Keep the soldiers numb, keep them compliant, keep them marching west even when their bodies begged to collapse. Looking at your comrades, glassy-eyed and swaying. You can see the argument, but you also know the other side without the drink. Many of you might have deserted long ago. The night in the trench is restless. You lie back on the frozen ground, staring at the sliver of sky between sandbags, and clutch your flask close. Your breath rises in white clouds, and your thoughts blur. You think of home, of warm bread, of laughter that isn't strained, of family faces you can barely recall. You promise yourself you'll quit when the war ends. But deep down, you know the vodka has already claimed you. The wind howls. Snow drifts into the trench, and you close your eyes. Tomorrow, the ritual will repeat. Another cup, another burn, another stagger forward into a war that demands more than you can give. And still, you'll drink. You lie in the trench, staring at the low clouds drifting across the night sky. Your breath rises in pale streams, and your hands twitch with exhaustion. The raid still lingers in your bones, but the real battle tonight isn't with the Germans. It's with your mind. You're hungry, cold, drunk, and so tired your body buzzes, and then, slowly, the shadows around you begin to shift. At first, you think it's just snow flurries, white specks catching the dim moonlight. But when you blink, you see shapes moving. You hear voices, familiar voices that don't belong in the trench. Your mother calling you for supper. Your brother laughing. A dog barking somewhere behind the lines. You sit up, dizzy, and for a heartbeat you're convinced you're back home. You smell bread, baking, warm and sweet, drifting across the frozen wasteland. You stumble to your feet, flask in hand, chasing the smell. Your comrades glance at you but say nothing. They've seen this before. Vodka blurs reality so well that hunger paints visions on top of it. You trudge a few steps, heart thumping, before realizing the bread isn't there. It never was. You laugh, a hollow, cracked sound, and tip back another swig. Historians record countless stories of soldiers hallucinating on the Eastern Front. Starvation, exhaustion, hypothermia all can play tricks on the brain. But vodka made the line between truth and fantasy thinner, easier to cross. Some soldiers claimed to see loved ones in the snow. Others heard music in the wind. You're part of that history now, swaying in the trench as visions blur with reality. One comrade, Sergei, joins you. He too has that faraway look in his eyes. He whispers, "I see my wife. She's there, standing by the tree." You glance toward the blackened stump he points at and almost see her too dark hair, a shawl over her shoulders, eyes glistening with warmth. For a moment, you want to believe it. You want to step forward, touch her hand, forget the war. But then a gust of wind scatters snow, and she vanishes. Sergei collapses, sobbing, clutching his empty flask. You sit with him, sharing what's left of your own vodka. It dulls the ache in your chest, but not enough. The visions return as soon as your head dips. You see a table laden with food, meat, potatoes, steaming soup. You hear laughter, clinking glasses, the comfort of family. The cruel part is, the more you drink, the clearer the images become. You know it's an illusion, yet you welcome it. Reality is too sharp without it. There's a quirky detail soldiers sometimes mentioned. They swore vodka made dreams more vivid. Some even looked forward to sleep, just to escape into hallucinations that felt like vacations from the front. You're no different. When you close your eyes now, the trench walls melt away. You're sitting in a warm kitchen, holding a glass of vodka that doesn't freeze your insides, but glows like sunlight. You laugh with people who aren't there. You eat food that doesn't exist. You almost forget you're lying in snow. But the danger of these visions is real. Once During a night watch, you nearly fired at shadows that weren't enemies. You saw movement figures slipping between trees and raised your rifle. Only the shout of a comrade stopped you. "They're ours, fool," he hissed. You lowered the weapon, shaking, embarrassed, though part of you still swore you'd seen Germans. Later, you blamed the vodka, but deep down, you knew the hunger had a hand in it too. Historians still debate how much vodka worsened these hallucinations. Did it simply magnify what starvation already caused? Or did it create its own phantoms, unique to the Red Army's addiction? Some memoirs suggest vodka saved soldiers from despair by giving them dreams to cling to. Others argue it drove men to madness, blurring friend and foe, life and death. You live inside that debate every night. By dawn, you're hollow-eyed and trembling. The hallucinations fade with daylight, but the memory of them clings. You try to laugh it off. "At least I saw a feast," you mutter to Vasily, who only glares. His night brought him visions of his dead brother, and there's no humor in that. You feel guilty, though not guilty enough to stop drinking. Later that day, when rations arrive, you clutch the bread like treasure. You chew slowly, savoring each stale bite. But even as the crumbs settle in your stomach, you reach for the flask again. The bread feeds your body, but the vodka feeds your mind. And out here, the mind needs feeding just as badly. As the sun sets, you prepare for another night. You already know what awaits. Shadows shifting, voices calling, food that doesn't exist. But you don't fear it anymore. You almost welcome it. Hallucinations, after all, are kinder than reality. You take a long drink, sigh, and whisper to yourself, "At least tonight, I'll eat like a king." The flask lowers, the trench darkens, and the illusions stir once more. The order comes just after dusk, a night raid. You groan, not out of fear, though fear gnaws at you, but because the vodka in your belly makes the ground sway. Your flask, tucked into your coat, clinks softly against your ribs with each step as you gather gear. Night raids are the kind of missions commanders love and soldiers dread. Silent movements, icy wind, and the promise of close encounters in the dark. And here you are, staggering already, thanks to liquid courage you thought you needed. Your comrades prepare beside you. Some check their rifles with precision, others grin with glazed eyes. You can tell who's drunker, who sways too far when standing still, who slurs words when whispering. The lieutenant barks for silence, but his own speech carries the slosh of spirits. It's an open secret. Even the officers drink, especially before raids. The vodka is supposed to steel nerves. Instead, it turns the group into a procession of shadows stumbling through snow. You set out across snow. The snow crunches beneath your boots, each step too loud. You try to move quietly, but your balance wavers. A comrade hisses at you, "Careful, idiot," as you nearly trip over a half-buried log. You mutter an apology, gripping your rifle tighter, though your fingers fumble at the trigger guard. The vodka makes you bold, yes, but boldness is dangerous when you can't walk straight. Historically, Soviet units often carried out night raids to harass German lines, steal supplies, or capture prisoners. Many accounts mention soldiers downing vodka before leaving, convinced it gave them courage. Historians still argue whether this habit saved lives by dulling fear or endangered them by reducing stealth. You're the embodiment of that argument now, weaving through snow while bullets sleep in German rifles just a few hundred meters away. The moon is a thin silver sliver, barely lighting the field. You see shadows ahead, trees, maybe ruined wagons. Your heart pounds, though your head feels light. Every sound is magnified. the scrape of boots, the rattle of gear, the wheeze of breath. You take another swig from your flask reckless, but your nerves scream for it. The liquid burns down, and you grin, whispering to yourself, invincible. Then it happens. A twig snaps under your boot. The sound cracks the silence like a gunshot. Immediately, rifles click around you, your own comrades, raising weapons, ready to fire at whatever caused the noise. One shouts, "Who's there?" You freeze, hands up, whispering furiously, "It's me, you fools." Their eyes narrow, suspicion sharp in the dark. For a heartbeat, you nearly die at the hands of your own brothers. "Too much vodka," one of them mutters, lowering his rifle. The others follow, but the glares sting more than the cold. You swallow hard, embarrassed, angry at yourself, yet still clutching the flask. You think, without it, you wouldn't have dared to come out here. With it, you nearly got shot by friends. That's the cruel irony. The raid continues, tense and sloppy. You creep toward a cluster of abandoned huts near the German line. Smoke curls faintly from one chimney, proof that the enemy is close. Your unit fans out, rifles raised, ready for contact. You try to focus, but the vodka haze makes the huts blur. Your rifle barrel drifts, and you struggle to steady it. A sober comrade hisses, "Aim straight, for God's sake," shoving your arm down. You nod, cheeks burning. There's a quirky detail about raids like this. Soldiers sometimes used vodka not just for courage, but as a weapon. Tossed into fires, it created sudden bursts of flame to scare enemies. Tonight, one soldier does exactly that. He hurls a half-empty bottle through a window, and flames erupt inside the hut. Germans shout in alarm, and gunfire bursts into the night. Chaos follows. You fire wildly, bullets zipping into darkness. The recoil jolts your numb arms, and you almost drop your rifle. You hear comrades shouting, the bark of German machine guns, the shriek of You stumble behind a wall, heart hammering. The vodka makes you feel fearless, but fear itself is still very real. You reload clumsily, hands shaking, then fire again. Not sure if you hit anything at all. When the order comes to retreat, relief floods you. You run, or rather, stagger back through the snow, lungs burning, legs heavy. Bullets snap past your ears, but somehow you keep moving. Your flask bounces against your chest with every step, and you cling to the absurd thought, "At least I didn't drop it." Back in the safety of your trench, you collapse, chest heaving. Comrades count heads, check wounds, mutter curses. One man glares at you, snarling, "Nearly got us killed with your clumsiness." Another pats your shoulder, saying, "At least you charged." Both are right. You grin weakly, take a drink, and let the fire spread again through your veins. Historians still debate the effectiveness of vodka-fueled raids. Some accounts tell of brave successes where drunken recklessness overwhelmed the enemy. Others recount disasters, friendly fire, botched stealth, needless casualties. Tonight, you feel like you've touched both sides of the argument. The vodka gave you courage to step into the night, but nearly got you shot before you even saw the Germans. As the fire dies down and silence returns, you curl into your corner of the trench. Your hands still shake, whether from adrenaline or alcohol, you can't tell. You whisper to yourself, "Never again" before a raid, but even as you say it, your fingers curl protectively around the flask. You know tomorrow, if ordered out again, you'll drink, because out here, fear is colder than the snow, and vodka, for all its betrayals, is the only thing that makes the cold bearable. The trench is barely more than a muddy scar carved into frozen soil. Walls reinforced with rotting planks and frostbitten corpses of logs. You crouch low, shivering, clutching your rifle, while the first German shells whistle overhead. The sound is less like thunder and more like the tearing of the sky itself, followed by crashes that shake the ground under your boots. Snow and dirt spray across your face, and instinct tells you to duck deeper. Instead, you reach for your flask. The vodka is warm compared to the icy air. You swig greedily, ignoring the sting, and the world blurs just enough that fear feels distant, almost comical. Vodka makes us bulletproof, a comrade once said, half joking, half believing. In this moment, you want to believe it too. You tilt your head back, letting the burn crawl through your chest. And suddenly, the shells don't sound as close. Commanders shout orders, voices cracking against the roar of artillery. You stagger to your feet, rifle raised, stumbling toward the parapet. Your comrades rise with you, some sober, others as tipsy as you are. One man crosses himself, another mutters curses, but all of you move forward together. The vodka has smoothed over the jagged edges of terror, turning dread into reckless energy. Historically, it wasn't unusual for Soviet commanders to encourage a ration just before combat. The idea was simple: dull fear, sharpen aggression. Some historians argue this liquid courage saved lives, giving men the nerve to climb out of trenches into machine gun fire. Others insist it caused chaos, with drunken soldiers firing too soon or too wildly. You, standing knee-deep in sludge, with your rifle trembling, are the blurry line between those two arguments. The order comes: advance. You scramble over the trench lip, boots slipping on icy dirt. Snow crunches underfoot, but the vodka in your veins makes every step feel lighter than it should. Bullets snap overhead, whipping into the ground around you. You should be terrified. Instead, you laugh a short, mad burst that makes a nearby soldier glare at you. "Careful, comrade," he hisses. The fascists can hear your jokes. You grin back, teeth chattering from both cold and drink. Ahead, the battlefield is a nightmare of smoke, shattered trees, and half-collapsed bunkers. You fire your rifle without aiming, convinced you see movement in the haze. Maybe you hit something, maybe not. Accuracy isn't your strength right now. Beside you, another soldier fires blindly, cursing in a slur. The two of you are a drunken duet, stumbling forward while the sober men try to keep formation. A shell explodes nearby, throwing you into the snow. Your ears ring, your vision swims, and for a moment you consider just lying there, letting the war pass over you like the blizzard. But your flask digs into your ribs, and the thought of losing it spurs you to stand. You stagger up, brushing snow from your face, and take another drink. Priorities, right? There's a quirky detail here. Many soldiers used vodka to clean wounds in the field. You've seen comrades pour it straight into bullet holes, gritting teeth while the liquid hissed against raw flesh. Whether it killed bacteria or just made the pain blur, nobody cared. Tonight, though, you use it differently. When a splinter from the explosion slices your cheek, you dab vodka on the cut, wincing, then laugh at yourself. Disinfected and hydrated, you mutter. Your comrade rolls his eyes. As the skirmish drags on, the vodka haze turns time elastic. Minutes feel like hours, and hours vanish in a blink. You remember firing, reloading, shouting, stumbling, then suddenly it's over. The Germans retreat, or maybe you do. It's hard to tell. The field is silent, except for groans and the distant creak of trees in the wind. Back in the trench, exhaustion sets in. You collapse onto the dirt, chest heaving, hands trembling. Around you, comrades slump in silence, some wounded, some simply drained. someone begins humming a folk tune, soft and shaky. You raise your flask in salute, though it's nearly empty now. The drink carried you through the fight, but it also left you hollow, body buzzing with fatigue and head thick with fog. Historians still debate whether the vodka ration truly boosted performance in battle. Was it a tool of survival, or just another shackle binding soldiers to the front lines? You don't care about the debate tonight. All you know is that without it, you might have frozen in fear at the trench lip, never moving forward at all. Night falls. You huddle with your comrades under a patched tarp, bodies pressed together for warmth. The wind seeps through every gap, biting at your skin. Your flask is dry, and the absence gnaws at you more than hunger. You promise yourself tomorrow you'll find more trade, beg, steal if necessary. You can endure the cold, the hunger, even the endless shells, but not the silence of an empty flask. And so you drift into a fitful sleep, dreams blurred with smoke and snow, cradling the metal flask as if it were your only friend left in this frozen world. The night howls around you like a pack of wolves. Snow sweeps across the trench in thick gusts, and your greatcoat stiffens into armor made of ice. You wake with a start, fingers numb, toes burning with that dull ache you know too well. Frostbite has begun its slow, silent creep. You flex your hands, trying to will blood into them, but the pain makes you grit your teeth. Beside you, one comrade mutters in his sleep. Another groans, as if the cold itself has weight pressing down on his chest. You fumble for your flask. It's not full, never full, but you manage a mouthful. The vodka bites your tongue and slithers down like a flame in your stomach. Instantly, the ache in your toes dulls. Your hands feel less brittle, and for a moment you believe you've found the cure. The commissars call it liquid fire. Soldiers joke it's better than socks. You cling to the myth because it's easier than admitting the truth. Vodka does nothing for frostbite except trick your body into thinking it's warm, while your tissues quietly die. That's the cruel comedy of this life. You lean back against the frozen dirt wall, clutching the flask, and think, this is how I'll outsmart the cold. Your breath fogs in front of you, and the frost creeping across your eyebrows sparkles in the dim light. You know deep down that tomorrow, when you peel off your boots, your toes will look blacker. But for now, the lie is enough. Historians point out that frostbite casualties on the Eastern Front numbered in the hundreds of thousands. It was nearly as deadly as bullets. Entire units were hobbled not by enemy fire, but by the endless Russian winters on both sides. Some records show commanders warning against vodka, insisting it worsened frostbite, while others kept distributing it anyway, valuing morale over long-term survival. The debate lingers even today. Did vodka prolong the fight, or did it quietly sabotage soldiers from the inside out? You glance at the soldier next to you, Vasily, who pulls off his boot to rub his foot. His toes are a ghastly shade of gray. He smiles weakly and says, "Vodka helps, comrade. It always helps." You nod, because what else can you do? You both know it's a lie, but the lie feels warm, and warmth is currency. You pass him the flask, and he drinks with shaking hands. Later that morning, you're ordered to patrol the trench line. The snow crunches under your boots, each step sending shocks of pain into your feet. You lean heavier on your rifle than you admit. Your head buzzes from the vodka, and you start to imagine the frostbite as some sly enemy, crawling slowly up your legs, waiting to strike. You laugh at your own thought. Better an enemy I can't see than one shooting at me, a joke, but also a truth you wish weren't so funny. When you reach the dugout, you find two men huddled inside, singing in whispers. Their hands are bare, cracked, bleeding. They pass around a flask as if it's a torch in the dark. You sit with them, share a drink, and feel the fire spread through your veins. For a few minutes, the three of you laugh at nothing at all. It feels like rebellion against the cold, a tiny victory. Here's a lesser-known detail. Soldiers sometimes stuffed straw into their boots or wrapped feet in newspapers to fight frostbite. You've tried both. Neither works as well as vodka seems to, at least in the moment. Tonight, you double wrap your socks in rags, then take another drink, convinced you've solved the problem. Deep down, you know you haven't. The day drags on with little movement. The Germans shell intermittently, but the cold is fiercer than the artillery. Your company huddles close, rationing out bread crusts like treasure. A man offers you a chunk of bread in exchange for 2 swigs of vodka. You hesitate only a second before handing it over. The bread is hard as stone, but it fills your mouth in a way vodka never can. Still, when your flask feels lighter, you regret the trade instantly. By evening, the frostbite has worsened. Your feet are numb now, almost mercifully so. But numbness is the whisper of disaster. You peel off your boots and see pale skin mottled with dark patches. You pretend not to notice. Instead, you pour a little vodka over your toes, hissing as the cold liquid stings. Medicine, you say out loud, as though speaking makes it true. A comrade nearby chuckles and says, "Drink the cure. Don't waste it." You grin back, though you feel a flicker of dread. Historians still argue whether soldiers truly believed vodka saved them from frostbite, or if they simply clung to the only comfort they had. You're certain it's both. Belief itself can feel like salvation when the world is frozen solid around you. As night falls, you curl into yourself, boots loose, flask pressed to your chest. The cold presses in from every side, relentless, patient. Your toes throb, then go quiet, and you force yourself to believe that means the vodka is working. Tomorrow, you'll march again. Tomorrow, you'll drink again. And tomorrow, you'll keep telling yourself the same lie that the bottle is your shield against the winter. Even as the frost creeps higher, the snow drifts silently across the trench, covering you like a shroud, and you close your eyes with a faint, drunken smile. For now, the vodka has won. The night fades into another dim, gray dawn. You open your eyes to the sight of frost caked on your lashes and the sound of someone humming a low, off-key tune that seems to hover between a lullaby and a dirge. It's your comrades again, passing around a battered flask near the fire pit. The flames are small, sputtering, little more than a glow of embers. Still, the vodka makes their laughter louder, their shoulders looser, their misery lighter. You drag yourself over, boots stiff, joints creaking, and drop onto the log beside them. Someone immediately hands you the flask. "Your turn," Vasily says, grinning with teeth that look more like cracked porcelain than enamel. You take a long pull, the liquid slashing through the icicles in your chest. A warmth blossoms falls, fleeting, but you'll take it. Around the fire, songs begin. They're folk songs, old as the soil itself, though none of you sing them straight. The vodka twists the notes, slurs the words. One man croons about a girl waiting at home. Another interrupts with a bawdy verse about sausage. You all laugh, even though the joke isn't funny. It's the laughter you crave, not the humor. Historians write about these moments of drunken camaraderie with caution. On the one hand, they argue, vodka gave soldiers a chance to bond, to remember they were men and not just cogs in Stalin's war machine. On the other hand, it blurred lines of discipline. Singing in trenches wasn't exactly stealthy. Some officers tolerated it, others punished it. But most looked the other way because they, too, drank from the same flasks. The songs turn into toasts. Cups are raised with whatever's left: vodka, melted snow, sometimes even kerosene by mistake. One soldier lifts his tin and says, "To spring," whenever it arrives. Another adds, "To boots without holes." The laughter this time is darker, jagged around the edges. You raise your flask and mutter, "Two socks that don't freeze solid." The men howl, clutching their sides. Though none of you truly find it funny, there's a curious detail here. Soldiers often used vodka not just to drink, but to barter for favors: food, a smoke, even a song. Tonight is no different. One man offers half his ration to anyone who'll tell a story from home. Another trades a sip for a strip of tobacco. You clutch your flask tightly, unwilling to part with even a drop. But you do tell a story about a cow you once tried to ride as a boy. It isn't true, but the men laugh until tears streak down their dirt-stained faces. The vodka fuels this illusion of normalcy. For a few hours, you almost forget the Germans, the frostbite, the endless shells. The fire crackles, the men sing, and you sway along, warmth spreading across your skin. Yet, even in this haze, you notice how thin everyone looks: hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, hands trembling, not just from cold, but from hunger. Vodka doesn't fill stomachs. It only tricks them. As the night deepens, the mood shifts. Laughter fades into melancholy. One soldier stares into the flames and whispers about his wife, how he left her pregnant when he went off to war. Another mumbles about a farm burned to the ground, cows slaughtered, fields salted. The vodka loosens tongues, and the pain spills out. You take another swig, letting it wash away the lump in your throat. If you talk about your family, you fear the words will crack you open. Historians still debate whether vodka was a balm or a poison in these moments. Did it strengthen bonds, creating the shared illusion of survival, or did it simply deepen despair once the laughter ran dry? Tonight, you lean toward the first. The laughter felt real enough, even if it came wrapped in drink. Later, you stagger back to your corner of the trench. Your head spins, but your chest feels light. The stars above are faint, blurred by smoke and snow, but you stare at them until your eyes close. For once, you sleep with a half smile on your lips, the echo of songs and toasts still buzzing in your ears. The morning, of course, is less forgiving. You wake with a pounding skull, the kind that feels like artillery shells detonating inside your head. Your mouth is dry, your stomach growls, and your boots are even stiffer than before. The camaraderie of last night lingers only in fragments: half-remembered songs, crooked grins. You curse softly, rub your temples, and reach for the flask again. Hair of the dog, you tell yourself. It works, at least enough to dull the pain. Here's the paradox you can't shake. The vodka both brings you closer to your comrades and drives you deeper into dependence. Without it, the nights would be unbearable. With it, the mornings are torture. Yet you know, as the next evening approaches, the fire will glow again, the songs will rise again, and you'll drink again. Because in a place where the cold bites harder than bullets, sometimes shared laughter, no matter how slurred, is the only shield you have. You stand, stretch aching limbs, and prepare for another day. Around you, comrades groan awake, already searching for their flasks. The cycle continues. Drink, laugh, cry, repeat. And though you know it's slowly unraveling you, you can't imagine the front without it. The rumble of your stomach is louder than the distant artillery. You sit in the trench, hunched against the biting wind, clutching your coat tighter around you. Bread rations have been cut, again just a fist-sized piece of rye, so hard it could chip teeth. You gnaw on it anyway, jaw aching with the effort, because hunger is a tyrant you can't ignore. When you're done, your stomach still growls, mocking you. So you reach for your flask. The vodka burns as always, filling the hollow space inside you with fire. For a moment, it tricks your body into believing it's fed. The warmth spreads, dulling the sharp pangs of emptiness. You sigh in relief, but it's short-lived. Hunger always returns, sharper than before. You take another swig, rationing less carefully than you should. You know the flask won't last long, but right now, the burn feels more important than the bread. This is the strange truth of life on the Eastern Front. Vodka often outlasted food. Supplies faltered constantly, especially in the winter of '42. Bread and meat were scarce, but vodka seemed to flow more reliably. Historians note this paradox: grain that could have been used for bread was instead distilled into spirits. Some argue it was deliberate policy. Keep soldiers drunk enough to march, even if their bellies were empty. Others suggest it was simply easier to transport barrels of vodka than loaves of bread that froze and spoiled around you. Comrades mutter the same complaints. One man holds up his tiny bread ration, scoffing, "This isn't food, it's a joke." Another trades half his portion for a swig of vodka from a neighbor's flask. The barter is quick, no argument needed. Everyone understands the exchange rate. Vodka is worth more than bread, even if it makes no sense. You've done it yourself before, though each time you regret it later when hunger claws your insides raw. There's a quirky detail about soldiers' diets sometimes. They resorted to boiling wallpaper glue for soup. The glue contained traces of starch, enough to give the illusion of nutrition. You've tasted it once, a slimy concoction that stuck to your teeth and tasted faintly of mold. You joked at the time, better than caviar, but even you couldn't keep a straight face. Vodka, at least, never pretends to be food. It's honest about being poison. That night, hunger gnaws deeper than usual. You sit by a dim lantern, flask in hand, and watch as Vasily pulls a scrap of tobacco from his pocket. He offers to share, but only in exchange for 2 mouthfuls of vodka. You hesitate. Your flask is already lighter than you'd like. But the idea of smoke in your lungs, of a fleeting distraction from hunger, tempts you. You agree. The trade is quick to swigs for one shared cigarette, and you both inhale like men drowning in air. The tobacco scratches your throat, but it feels worth it. You lean back, exhaling smoke and vodka breath into the freezing night. Historians still debate whether vodka helped soldiers endure deprivation or simply masked the symptoms long enough for them to collapse. Some memoirs describe vodka as liquid bread, sustaining men through days without rations. Others recall it as a curse, numbing hunger until soldiers starved quietly without realizing how close they were to death. You feel both truths at once, the warmth, now the emptiness, lurking beneath. Later, when the company is ordered to move, you struggle to your feet. Hunger makes your legs weak, vodka makes your steps clumsy, and together they form a dangerous duet. You stumble more than once, catching yourself on your rifle. Your comrades notice, but say nothing. They're staggering too. An army of ghosts, you think, trudging westward with bellies empty and flasks half-full. At a brief halt, you watch a man bite into a frozen beet he found in a ruined barn. His teeth crack against the ice, blood smearing his lips, but he chews anyway. Desperate, you take another drink, telling yourself you're smarter than that. But deep down, you envy him for having something solid to chew. Here's another small, strange truth. Soldiers often drank vodka mixed with snow to stretch it further. You've done it before, scooping icy handfuls into your cup, swirling until the liquid turned cloudy. It dulled the burn, but also dulled the effect. Tonight, though, you decide not to dilute. You drink straight, greedy, unwilling to let the cold cheat you of the fire. By midnight, your hunger twists into hallucinations. You see shapes in the snow, hear voices that aren't there. Once, you swear you smell bread baking, warm and yeasty, drifting from a farmhouse. You stagger toward the scent before realizing it's just smoke from damp firewood. You laugh at yourself, a hollow, broken laugh, and take another swig. The vodka doesn't cure the hunger, but it makes the hallucinations less cruel. As you collapse into your corner of the trench, stomach gnawing itself raw, you realize the cruelest truth of all. You've begun to prefer the burn of vodka to the taste of bread. Bread fills you, but leaves you longing. Vodka empties you, but leaves you warm. In this twisted economy of survival, you've traded one addiction for another. You close your eyes, clutching the flask to your chest, whispering a promise to yourself. Tomorrow, you'll eat first, drink second. But you already know it's a lie. Tomorrow, when the rations arrive, your hand will reach for the flask before the bread. Hunger may kill you, but vodka keeps you alive just long enough to march one more day. The morning after a night of hallucinations is always rougher than you admit. Your head throbs like a drum, your tongue feels like sandpaper, and your stomach is an empty pit that growls in protest. You rub your temples, trying to shake the fog, but it clings stubbornly. The vodka is both your cure and your disease, so naturally, the first thing you do is take another sip. The burn eases the headache for a moment, though it also stirs the dizziness again. You sigh, realizing you've built a trap for yourself, and you keep walking anyway. The commissar arrives, barking orders for the company to line up. His coat is immaculate compared to your tattered gear, and he carries himself with the stiff pride of authority. He scans the line, eyes narrowing at slouched postures and dull expressions. Normally, he would punish men for drunkenness, public scoldings, reduced rations, even time in the penalty battalion where survival was unlikely. But you've noticed a pattern. The more battles loom, the more lenient the officers become. Everyone knows why. They need you willing to fight, and the vodka keeps you willing. As the commissar passes, you catch a glimpse of a flask bulging under his belt. You almost laugh out loud. Punish you for drinking. Maybe in theory. In practice, the officers are as hooked as the men. It's the army's worst-kept secret. Vodka isn't just tolerated, it's shared. More than once, you've seen a lieutenant take a swig before issuing orders, then slip the flask back into his coat as if no one noticed. There's a quirky detail historians love to mention. Vodka was often used as a reward for soldiers who survived particularly brutal assignments. Capture a trench, hold a bridge, repair a line under fire. Then here, comrade, have an extra ration. Imagine that, your life risked for a few gulps of liquid fire. You've been on the receiving end of such rewards. Once, after holding out against a German assault until reinforcements arrived, you were handed a tin cup brimming with vodka. The commander toasted to the heroes, and you drank it down, more grateful than you'd ever admit. The medal you never received still stings, but the vodka, that memory remains. Historians still argue about whether this system of reward created discipline or destroyed it. Did men fight harder for the promise of vodka, or did it reduce their bravery to drunken stumbles? You think about that sometimes. Was your charge across no man's land an act of courage, or the recklessness of a man too drunk to feel fear? The line is thinner than anyone wants to admit. During the day's drills, you find yourself punished lightly for clumsy movements. The commissar shouts, "Straighten up," eyes front, but his voice lacks venom. You suspect he's thinking about his own flask, waiting for him after the drills. When the exercise ends, you slump against a wall, exhausted. Vasily sits beside you, whispering, "Don't worry." He drinks more than we do. You both laugh, a soft, conspiratorial laugh that bonds you more tightly than orders ever could. Later, you witness something unusual. A comrade, Andrei, stumbles badly during a formation, nearly dropping his rifle. The commissar strides toward him, fury in his eyes. Everyone braces for punishment. But instead of shouting, the commissar pulls a small bottle from his coat, presses it into Andrei's hand, and mutters, "Steady yourself." The line erupts in muffled chuckles. Andrei nods gratefully, drinks, and stands taller. The hypocrisy is blatant, but nobody complains. After all, the more the officers drink, the less they punish. Here's another lesser-known truth. Sometimes vodka rations were withheld as punishment, considered harsher than docking food. Soldiers could endure hunger, but losing vodka felt unbearable. You've been on the receiving end once, after misfiring your rifle during a drill. The absence gnawed at you worse than missing bread. You'd begged friends for sips, traded gear, even considered stealing. That memory still burns hotter than the drink itself. As evening approaches, the company gathers for orders. A raid is planned for tomorrow, and tensions run high. Normally, fear would hang heavy over the men. Tonight, though bottles circulate freely, passed from hand to hand in a silent pact, even the officers pretend not to see. You drink deeply, letting the haze build, telling yourself it's preparation, not indulgence. One soldier raises a toast to our commissar, who punishes us with one hand and drinks with the other. Laughter roars through the trench. Even the commissar smirks, shaking his head but saying nothing. In that moment, rank dissolves. You're all just men clutching bottles, trying to forget the frost, the hunger, the fear. Historians still argue whether this shared addiction built unity or eroded discipline. In your bones, you know it did both. The hypocrisy of the officers made you distrust them, but their silent participation made them human. You hated them less when you saw them swig. As night falls, you curl into your corner, flask half empty, heart heavy. The punishment you once feared feels hollow now. You realize vodka is no longer just a ration. It's a leash, binding you to this frozen hell, keeping you marching, keeping you fighting. Even as it slowly unravels your body and mind, you take one last drink, close your eyes, and think, tomorrow, the commissar will shout again, and tomorrow, he'll drink again too, and so will you. The cold is sharper today, as though winter itself decided to bare its teeth. You line up with the others in the pale morning light, boots crunching on snow that never seems to melt. Your stomach twists from hunger, your head swims from the drink you couldn't resist before dawn. And yet here, you aren't preparing for another offensive. The commissar shouts orders, his voice slicing through the frozen air, and you shuffle forward with rifle in hand. You can feel the vodka in your veins, buzzing like electricity. It's strange, you're exhausted, half frozen, half starved, and yet you also feel untouchable. That's the trick of it. The vodka dulls pain and fear, turning your body into a reckless machine. But deep down, you know the truth. You're more fragile now than ever. You wobble slightly as you march, trying to look steady. Around you, others do the same. You're not alone in this haze. The German line waits ahead, hidden behind smoke and frostbitten trees. You can hear their artillery testing the morning with thumps that echo like distant drums. The commander gives the signal. You stagger forward, snow splintering beneath your boots, rifle heavy in your hands. Bullets start to whine overhead, snapping through branches and snowbanks. You duck, laugh nervously, and mutter, "They can't hit me." Your comrade glares, whispering, "Save your breath for running." Historians record that many Soviet offensives, particularly in the winter of 42-43, were launched with soldiers still drunk from morning rations. Some accounts describe men charging fearlessly into fire, shouting songs, while others tell of soldiers stumbling, misfiring, or collapsing before reaching enemy trenches. You're part of that messy truth, now half brave, half foolish, propelled more by vodka than by tactics. The attack unfolds in chaos. You raise your rifle, aim at shapes in the haze, and fire. The recoil jolts your numb arms, and you laugh again, as though the sound of gunfire were a punchline. Beside you, Sergei curses, shouting for you to focus. You nod, then fire again, not entirely sure what you're aiming at. A bullet zips past your ear, close enough to sting, and you stumble, dizzy. The vodka makes it easy to ignore fear, but harder to obey instincts. You push forward anyway. The snow is streaked with mud and flashes of blood, though you hardly notice. All that matters is the rhythm: aim, fire, drink from the flask. It's absurd, but you do it one swig between volleys, as though the vodka itself were ammunition. Bulletproof, you whisper again, clinging to the illusion. A shell explodes nearby, tossing you into a shallow crater. Your ears ring, your body aches, but you sit up, laughing hysterically. "Is that all you've got?" You shout into the smoke. A sober soldier drops into the crater beside you, eyes wide with panic. He shakes your shoulder, yelling, "Get it together. We're still under fire." You nod, grinning stupidly, and raise your flask in a toast. He doesn't laugh. Here's a quirky detail. Soldiers sometimes used vodka-soaked cloths as makeshift hand warmers, pressing them against frostbitten skin before battle. You've done it yourself, though it never really worked. Today, you press the flask to your lips instead, letting the fire inside distract you from the chaos around you. The offensive grinds on. You stagger forward with the others, bullets slicing through the air, men shouting, snow flying. At some point, you realize you've lost track of direction. Are you advancing or retreating? The vodka fog makes it impossible to tell. You follow the nearest group, trusting they know better. You fire when they fire, shout when they shout, stumble when they stumble. Historians still argue whether vodka was a tactical advantage or a disaster in moments like this. Some claim it gave soldiers the reckless courage needed to overwhelm better-armed Germans. Others insist it led to confusion, friendly fire, and unnecessary losses. You don't care about the debate right now. All you know is that without the drink, you might have frozen in fear. With it, you're a staggering mess, but at least you're moving. Eventually, the order to fall back reaches you. You collapse into the trench again, chest heaving, head spinning. Around you, men slump against the walls, some groaning from wounds, others laughing in delirium. You sit beside Vasily, who clutches a bloodied arm, and hand him the flask. He drinks deeply, wincing, then mutters, "Better than morphine." You nod. Though the thought makes you shiver, there's another lesser-known truth. Vodka was sometimes used by medics as a crude anesthetic during surgery. You've seen comrades bite down on soaked rags while bullets were dug out of their flesh. Tonight, Vasily pours a little on his wound, hissing as it stings, then drinks the rest. Disinfected inside and out, he jokes weakly. You laugh, though your stomach churns. As night falls, you lie back in the trench, eyes heavy, body buzzing with exhaustion and alcohol. The offensive feels like a blur, a nightmare you can't piece together. You remember firing, laughing, stumbling, shouting. You don't remember whether you hit anyone, whether you even did your part. But tomorrow, the ration will come again, and you'll drink again, and you'll march again. That's the cycle now. Fight half blind, survive half drunk. You close your eyes, flask pressed to your chest like a medal. Historians will debate your bravery, your recklessness, your addiction. You don't care. All you care about is that, for one more day, you're alive. And as long as the flask isn't empty, maybe you'll stay that way. The order to move through a village comes at dawn, and you groan when you hear it. Villages mean people, and people mean eyes. Watching eyes that can see the staggering sway in your step, the slur in your voice, the flask you clutch like a sacred relic. Still, you obey. The company trudges down the frozen road, rifles slung, boots crunching on ice. Smoke curls from chimneys, faint but real, and your stomach growls at the smell. The houses are half collapsed, roofs caved in under snow, walls riddled with bullet holes, but some still stand. Civilians appear at doorways, faces pale and thin, wrapped in ragged shawls. Children peer from behind skirts, eyes wide. You shift uncomfortably under their gaze. You wonder what you look like. A Red Army soldier, uniform filthy cheeks, flushed with drink, breath stinking of vodka. Not exactly the image of liberation. A woman steps forward, holding a jug of milk. She speaks softly, offering it in exchange for something. You already know what she wants. Your flask is half empty, but you raise it anyway, shaking it gently. Her eyes light up. Vodka is currency here, as valuable as bread or bullets. You pour a little into her tin cup, and she hands you the jug. The milk is thin, almost watery, but it's a miracle compared to what you've been drinking. You gulp, greedily, wiping your mouth with the back of your hand. Historians record this barter as common practice on the Eastern Front. Civilians, starved and desperate, valued vodka for trade, warmth, or even as a brief escape from misery. Soldiers, equally desperate, traded their rations for food, shelter, or small comforts. Was it exploitation, survival, or a strange form of camaraderie? Scholars still debate. You don't care. All you know is that for the first time in weeks, milk runs down your throat instead of fire. Children hover nearby, watching you. One boy points at your flask and mimics drinking. You chuckle and wave him away, though guilt prickles your chest. You imagine how you must look leaning on your rifle, grinning stupidly, the smell of spirits clinging to your breath. You want to tell him this isn't what a soldier should be, but you don't. You just take another swig and hope he forgets. There's a quirky detail you've learned. Some villagers used vodka not just for drinking, but for cleaning wounds, lighting stoves, even treating livestock. You once saw a farmer pour vodka onto a cow's frostbitten udder, muttering it would wake the flesh. The cow didn't look impressed. Tonight, the woman you traded with uses a splash to clean her child's cut hand, wincing as the boy cries. You watch quietly, flask heavy in your palm, struck by how the same liquid rules both your lives in different ways. Your comrades make their own trades. Sergei barters half his ration for a handful of boiled potatoes. Vasily swaps a sip for wool socks. One man even trades his entire flask for a kiss from a young woman at the edge of the village. You laugh at that, though part of you envies him. Vodka is precious, but human touch is rarer. As the company prepares to move on, An old man approaches you. His beard is white, his back stooped, but his eyes are sharp. He mutters something in Russian, too low for others to hear. You drink too much. You freeze, startled. You want to deny it, to laugh it off, but his gaze holds steady. For a moment, you feel naked, exposed. Then you smile weakly, raise the flask in salute, and walk away. His eyes follow you, heavy with judgment. Historians still argue whether civilians admired or despised Soviet soldiers for their drinking. Some accounts suggest villagers saw the soldiers as tragic brothers, numbing pain the only way they could. Others describe resentment, disgust at liberators who stumbled into homes reeking of alcohol. You feel both possibilities pressing on you, now the warmth of the milk in your belly, the sting of the old man's words. That night, your company camps on the edge of the village. Fires crackle, potatoes boil in battered tins, and men laugh more easily than usual. The vodka flows freely, mixed with whatever food was traded. You sip milk and vodka together, a bizarre cocktail that warms your throat and soothes your hunger. You almost feel human again. But when the laughter dies down, guilt creeps back in. You think of the boy mimicking your drinking, the old man's piercing gaze, the woman trading milk for fire. You wonder what they'll remember, saviors or staggering drunkards. You take another sip to chase the thought away, but it lingers in the corners of your mind like smoke as you curl up to sleep. Flask beside you, you tell yourself the same story you always do. Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow you'll drink less. Tomorrow you'll fight sober. Tomorrow you'll be the soldier those children imagine you should be. But as your eyes close, your hand curls tighter around the flask. You know the truth. Tomorrow will look much like today. The medical tent smells like sweat, smoke, and something sharper disinfectant, though you suspect much of it is just vodka. You limp inside, clutching your arm where shrapnel grazed you earlier that morning. The flap closes behind you, and the dim light of lanterns fills the space. Rows of men groan on stretchers, some pale as ghosts, some screaming as medics dig into wounds with forceps that look older than the war itself. You collapse onto a cot, head spinning. A medic hurries over, face gaunt, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He doesn't ask what's wrong. He just looks at the blood on your sleeve and shakes his head. "Vodka?" he asks bluntly. You nod and pass him your flask. He doesn't even drink from it. Instead, he pours some directly over the wound. You hiss, jerking back, but he presses your arm firmly, muttering, "Better than nothing." That's the reality here. Vodka doubles as anesthetic, antiseptic, and painkiller. You've heard stories of surgeries performed with nothing but a bottle of spirits to dull the agony. Soldiers biting down on rags soaked in vodka, while medics sawed through bone. Tonight, you only need stitches, but the principle is the same. The medic threads a needle, dips it in your flask, then begins to sew. You grit your teeth and drink hard, fire burning through your chest to distract from the fire in your arm. Historians record that Soviet medical units often relied on vodka for sterilization when supplies ran short. Was it effective? Scholars still argue. Some say it saved countless lives, killing germs in wounds. Others insist it did little but create the illusion of safety. You feel both truths at once, grateful for the sting, terrified it might not be enough. The tent echoes with strange sounds. A man screams as a bullet is pried from his thigh. Another laughs hysterically, drunk on both vodka and morphine, singing a folk song as medics bandage him. A third lies silent, eyes glazed, flask slipping from his fingers. You stare, realizing he's gone. The medic simply shakes his head and moves on. No ceremony, no pause, just another body in a war that devours them daily. You take another swig, forcing yourself to look away. The vodka doesn't just dull pain, it dulls conscience. You tell yourself you're lucky, that a stitched arm is nothing compared to men missing legs or lungs. But guilt still coils in your stomach. You sip again, and the guilt fades, at least for now. There's a quirky detail you notice. One of the medics uses vodka to clean his hands between patients. He rubs it over his palms, then shakes them dry, the fumes filling the air. It smells like the same liquid you drink nightly by the fire. But here, it's treated like medicine. You laugh softly, and the medic glares, snapping, "Better than mud." He's right. You nod, sobering quickly. As you rest on the cot, stitches pulling at your skin, you overhear conversations around you. One soldier insists vodka made him brave enough to charge a machine gun nest. Another swears it saved him from shock after losing a finger. A third mutters bitterly that it's killing them all slowly, turning fighters into stumbling drunks. The debate rages in whispers, but no one stops drinking, not even the medics. Later, a surgeon strides in, his white coat stained and reeking of spirits. He's clearly been drinking too, though his hands are steady as he begins a more serious operation on a man with shrapnel in his chest. "More vodka," he orders, and assistants pour it both into the wound and down the man's throat. The soldier screams, then passes out. The surgeon keeps working. You turn away, swallowing hard. Historians still argue whether such practices were desperation or ingenuity. Was vodka a poor substitute for real medicine, or a symbol of resilience in the face of scarcity? You don't have the answer. All you know is that it kept you stitched, bandaged, and still breathing. When night falls, you're released back to the trench. Your arm throbs, but the flask eases it. Vasily greets you with a crooked grin, raising his own bottle. See, the drink heals everything. You laugh, though not as easily as before. You've seen too much in that tent to fully believe the joke. Yet later, when the pain spikes, you drink deeply, clutching the flask like a talisman. You tell yourself it's medicine. The line between truth and lie is blurred, but at this point, you don't care. As you drift toward uneasy sleep, you remember the silent soldier whose flask slipped from his fingers. You wonder if he believed the vodka would save him too. You press your own flask to your chest, whispering, "Not yet, not me." The drink burns down your throat one last time, and you surrender to dreams half medicine, half poison, fully yours. The snow has stopped, but the cold lingers like a curse. You crouch in the trench, scribbling on a scrap of paper by the weak light of a lantern. The paper is dirty, creased, smudged with fingerprints. You can hardly hold the pencil steady. Your hand trembles from the wound stitched in the medical tent and from the vodka buzzing through your veins. Still, you're right. Letters home are rationed like everything else, but tonight you feel the pull of memory, of family, dearest. You begin, though your words wobble. You want to say you're strong, that you're holding steady, that victory feels close, but the truth drips out differently. Your sentences lean crooked. Your handwriting sprawls like barbed wire. You pause often, swigging vodka from your flask, trying to steady yourself. Instead, the drink makes your letters blur on the page. Ink smears beneath your palm, as if the words themselves are too ashamed to stand. Historians often note that soldiers' letters were censored, scrubbed of fear and despair. But the smears, the crooked lines, the misspellings, those slipped past the censors. They revealed more than words could. Some families back home kept those letters as treasures. not realizing how much vodka guided the pen. You wonder if your family will notice the stains, the shaky handwriting, the faint smell of alcohol soaked into the paper. You write of warmth you don't feel, of food you don't eat, of laughter that doesn't come easily. You promise to return soon, though the words ring hollow even to your own ears. You tell your mother you are healthy, though your toes ache with frostbite. You tell your wife you are brave, though you nearly cried during the last bombardment. You tell your brother to drink a toast for you, though you've already drunk enough for both. There's a quirky detail about letters from the front. Some soldiers sprinkled vodka on the paper before sealing it, believing the scent would carry their spirit home. You've heard of men dipping the corner of the page into their flask, then sending it off. You try it now, wetting the edge of your letter with a drop. It leaves a faint stain, darker than ink. You smile at the absurdity, whispering, "So you'll know me by smell," Vasily writes beside you, muttering curses when his pencil breaks. He takes a sip between each line, his handwriting devolving into scribbles. "My wife will think I've gone stupid," he laughs. You laugh too, though you know your own letter looks no better. Sergei, on the other hand, refuses to drink while writing. His lines are neat, careful, full of poetic flourishes. You envy him, but also pity him. How can he write clearly in this place? As the night deepens, you fold your paper carefully, though it's smudged and damp. You slide it into an envelope, sealing it with spit and a silent prayer. The commissar will collect it tomorrow, though you know half the words will never reach home. Still, writing eases the ache in your chest. For a few minutes, letters more honest or more delusional. Did it loosen tongues enough to admit despair, or did it fuel false bravado, exaggerated promises of strength? Reading your letter, you see both. You promised return, promised health, promised victory all lies. But you also admitted your longing, your hunger, your need. The drink blurred the line between confession and deception. Later, as the lantern dims, you read your letter aloud softly, as if sending it by voice instead of paper. The words slur on your tongue, but they feel alive. You imagine your wife hearing them, laughing at your crooked lines, maybe even forgiving them. The vision makes your chest ache, so you drink again to soften it. A comrade nearby rips up his letter, tossing scraps into the snow. "No point," he mutters. "They won't believe it anyway." You shake your head, clutching your envelope tighter. Even if your words are lies, even if they never arrive, the act of writing matters. It reminds you that you're still human, not just a body in the mud. Here's another lesser-known truth. Some soldiers used vodka to barter for paper or pencils. Supplies were scarce, but men would trade precious drink just to scrawl a few lines to loved ones. You once gave up half a ration for 2 sheets of paper. At the time, you regretted it bitterly. Tonight, holding your letter, you realize it was worth it. As you settle back against the trench wall, flask in hand, you whisper a final line to yourself, "I will come home." You don't write it down. It feels too fragile for paper. Instead, you let the vodka carry it through your blood. A private vow between you and the drink. The lantern flickers out. You tuck the letter under your coat, close your eyes, and dream of hands opening it weeks from now, tracing your smeared words, smelling the faint sting of spirits. Whether they believe the lies or hear the truth between lines, you don't know. You just hope they'll read it and remember you as more than a staggering shadow in the snow. Morning arrives like a hangover stretched across the horizon. The snow is dull gray, the sky a sheet of iron, and every sound seems muffled, as though the world itself is too tired to echo. You sit in the trench, letter tucked in your coat, flask already half empty. Your arm throbs from stitches, your stomach growls from hunger, but your mind is wrapped in cotton. Days are bleeding together, and the vodka is the only thing tying them apart. You try to remember yesterday's battle. The Germans attacked at dawn, or was it dusk? You remember firing, shouting, stumbling, but the details dissolve when you reach for them. Instead of clarity, you see flashes. The snow lit up with fire, Vasily screaming, Sergei laughing like a madman, your own hands trembling on the rifle. You drank before, during, after. Now, when you try to piece it together, it all melts into one blur. Historians write about this phenomenon, how vodka made battles indistinguishable from one another. Soldiers described the war not as a series of events, but as one endless smear of fire, snow, and drink. Dates lost meaning, places blurred, victories and defeats felt the same. Was it courage or confusion? Even scholars still argue. For you, it's just exhaustion. You can't tell one offensive from the last. You can barely tell what month it is. A comrade nudges you. Do you remember the river crossing? He asks. You frown. Did you cross a river? You see flashes of water, black and churning. Men wading waist deep, rifles raised above their heads. Or maybe you're remembering a story someone else told. You laugh weakly. Of course, you lie. He laughs too, though his eyes tell you he doesn't believe you. Maybe he doesn't remember either. The vodka is both culprit and cure. It erases details, but makes the erasure bearable. You drink, forget, drink again. Without it, maybe you'd remember too much: the screams, the frostbitten toes, the faces of men who didn't make it. With it, you remember nothing at all. Maybe that's mercy. Maybe it's poison. There's a quirky detail about the Red Army. Some soldiers marked time not by calendars, but by bottles. That was 3 flasks ago, they'd say, when asked about a particular battle. You've caught yourself doing the same. Last week's raid, 2 flasks. The offensive, where you fell in the crater. 4. It's ridiculous, yet it makes more sense than counting days. Vodka is the only measure that matters anymore. Today's orders are the same as always. Prepare to advance. You clean your rifle mechanically, swigging between motions. Your hands move without thought. The metal gleams faintly, though your vision wavers. Around you, comrades mutter the same half-jokes they always do. Another glorious day, Sergei says with a smirk. Another glorious hangover, Vasily adds. You all laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's familiar. When the attack begins, you move forward in a haze. Snow, mud, smoke your boots, sink, your rifle jolts, your flask digs into your ribs. You fire when others fire, reload when they reload, shout when they shout. The Germans return fire, but even the bullets feel blurred, less real. You stumble, fall, rise again, half convinced you're dreaming. You drink mid-battle, tipping the flask to your lips between volleys. It steadies your nerves, but fogs your aim. You think you see shapes, retreating Germans, fleeing, but you're not sure. Maybe it's smoke, maybe it's comrades. You fire anyway. Historians still argue whether vodka made soldiers more dangerous to themselves than to the enemy. Accounts exist of friendly fire, of men shooting at shadows, of confusion amplified by drink. Others insist the Red Army's reckless charges, fueled by vodka, broke German lines by sheer momentum. Both could be true. You live in the contradiction every day. By evening, the offensive ends. Victory, defeat. You're not sure. You slump into the trench, chest heaving, snow clinging to your coat. Vasily sits beside you, face pale, flask empty. He mutters, "What day is it?" You shrug. Neither of you knows. Neither of you cares. Later, as darkness settles, you try to write another letter. You want to tell your wife about the battle, but what would you say? We attacked, we retreated, we drank. That's every day. You scratch out a few lines, then stop, staring at the paper until it blurs. Instead, you take another drink, letting the words dissolve into silence. Here's another small truth. Soldiers often joked they would only remember the war through vodka. We'll tell our grandchildren, they said, but we'll need a bottle to do it. You wonder if that's true. If you survive, will you remember anything without a drink in hand? Or will the war itself be one long, drunken dream? As you lie back in the trench, flask on your chest, you whisper to yourself, it all melts together. You close your eyes, hearing distant shells, smelling smoke, tasting vodka. Tomorrow will be the same. Another battle, another drink, another blur. Time itself has drowned in the bottle, and you're floating on its surface, too tired to swim. The trench is quiet tonight, quieter than you like. The snow muffles sound, and the wind has paused as though holding its breath. You sit huddled with your comrades, flask in hand, but the laughter that usually bubbles up is absent. Everyone looks tired, worn thinner than the paper your letters are written on. Even Sergei, who can always be counted on for a joke, stares silently at the ground. Something is shifting, not in the snow, but in the spirit of the company. You feel it too. The vodka still warms you, still burns in your chest, but it doesn't feel the same. The flask is lighter than ever, and so is the mood. Orders have grown harsher, punishments sharper. A soldier caught sleeping at his post last week was beaten in front of everyone. Not sent to a penal battalion, not docked rations, just beaten until he could barely crawl. You remember the look on his face, not fear, not pain, but shame. And yet, 2 hours later, he begged for vodka to dull the bruises. Discipline is cracking like ice underfoot. Men drink more than their rations, sneaking into supply wagons, trading gear, even stealing from each other. Trust phrase. You've seen fists fly over half a flask, curses shouted louder than German artillery. Officers try to stamp it out, but you've seen their hands shaking too. They lecture by day and drink by night. The hypocrisy is so obvious, it no longer feels worth mentioning. Historians write that by 1943, vodka had become both a tool and a trap. The Red Army issued it to keep morale high, but too much led to breakdowns in order. Some units grew reckless, stumbling into danger. Others grew sluggish, men too drunk to march at dawn. Scholars still debate whether it was more dangerous to give soldiers vodka or to take it away. You don't need debate, you live the paradox. Tonight, you hear whispers of men planning to desert. Not across enemy lines, that's suicide, but to slip into the woods, vanish into the snow, find villages where they can barter vodka for bread and never come back. You almost laugh at the thought. Where would they go? The snow covers everything. The war stretches across the horizon. Still, the whispers linger, and the vodka fuels them. Men talk louder when drunk, secrets spilling like drink from an overfilled cup. There's a quirky detail you notice during these whispers. Men lower their voices when speaking of home, of family, of shame. But when they talk about vodka, they speak openly, as if the drink itself commands honesty. One soldier mutters, "I'd trade my rifle for another bottle." Another says, "I'd fight the Germans with my fists if I had enough drink." Everyone laughs, though uneasily. The line between jest and truth is blurred, like everything else now. The next morning, orders come for drills. Half the company stumbles into formation, eyes bloodshot, steps uneven. The commissar shouts until his voice cracks, but no one sharpens. You sway slightly, hiding your flask behind your coat. A sergeant spots you, snarls, and snatches it away. Rage boils in your chest. You want to strike him, curse him, but the fear of punishment stops you. Still, the loss gnaws at you, worse than hunger. Later, you see that same sergeant duck behind a supply shed and take a long swig from the confiscated flask. You feel both furious and vindicated. The chain of command isn't broken, it's just drunk. Historians still argue about whether discipline truly collapsed in the Red Army, or if such stories are exaggerated. Some records show units holding together, pushing forward despite the drink. Others reveal breakdowns, mutinies, hushed up, desertions, buried in reports. You're not sure which story history will tell, but you know the truth. Here in the trench, discipline is held together by thread, and vodka is both the knot and the knife. That evening, Sergei finally speaks. "We're not soldiers anymore," he mutters, eyes glassy. "We're prisoners of the bottle." Vasily snorts, replying, "Better a prisoner of vodka than a prisoner of the Germans." The others chuckle weakly, but the silence afterward is heavy. You take a sip, letting the burn drown the thought before it takes root. As night falls, the breakdown becomes clearer. A fight erupts between two men over a ration gone missing. Fists fly, boots stomp, curses fill the air. The commissar intervenes, pistol drawn, threatening to shoot them both. For a moment, you think he might. Instead, he orders them to stand guard all night without drink. Their faces crumble in horror. You realize then that withholding vodka has become a punishment more feared than death. You lie awake, flask tucked against your chest, listening to the guards mutter through chattering teeth. You feel a strange mix of pity and pride. You still have your drink, but you know you're no stronger than they are. If someone stole your flask, you'd crumble too. Before sleep, you whisper to yourself, "Hold on, hold together." But you're not sure whether you mean the company, the army, or your own fraying mind. The vodka dulls the question, but the answer lingers somewhere in the dark. The order to retreat comes at dawn, and it hits harder than any artillery. You're half asleep, head pounding, flask clutched like a lifeline, when the shouts ripple down the trench. "Fall back, fall back." The words sting. Retreat is a word no one wants to hear. It tastes like ash, like failure. But in your state, with frostbite creeping up your toes and vodka dulling the edges of your mind, you feel relief more than shame. You scramble to your feet, slinging your rifle over your shoulder. The snow crunches beneath you as you stagger, boots slipping on ice. The flask bangs against your ribs with every step. Instinct tells you to run fast, but the drink makes your legs heavy, uncoordinated. You stumble, fall, curse, then push yourself up again. Around you, the retreat is chaos, men shouting, rifles dropped, boots pounding through mud and slush. Artillery shells crash behind you, the Germans pressing forward. You hear bullets zipping overhead, snapping through the air like whips. Fear should sharpen your senses, but instead, it collides with vodka's haze. You feel both terrified and detached, as though watching yourself from a distance. You mutter, "Keep moving," over and over, like a chant. Historians describe Soviet retreats as brutal affairs or dissolving into panic. Men crushed by the shame of stepping backward instead of forward. But they also note how common they were, especially early in the war. Entire units were forced to fall back, regroup, and stumble into the next fight. Some argue vodka made retreats easier, numbing the despair. Others claim it worsened them, slowing men, making them reckless. You don't need debate. You live the contradiction right now, staggering, clutching your bottle tighter than your rifle. At one point, you trip into a snowbank, rifle flying from your hands. For a second, you panic, scrambling desperately not for the weapon, but for the flask. Your fingers close around the metal, and you breathe relief. Only then do you retrieve the rifle. You laugh bitterly, realizing your priorities are clear. Bottle first, weapon second. What kind of soldier are you now? The retreat stretches on, mile after mile. Your lungs burn, your legs ache, but the vodka keeps you moving. Every few steps, you tip the flask to your lips, fire running down your throat, convincing you you're strong enough to keep going. The truth is, you're barely holding together. You stumble into Vasily, who curses but steadies you. His flask dangles from his coat, nearly empty. He mutters, "We'll outrun them if the bottles don't run out first." You both laugh, hollow and cracked. As you rest on the cot, stitches pulling at your skin, you overhear conversations around you. One soldier insists vodka made him brave enough to charge a machine gun nest. Another swears it saved him from shock after losing a finger. A third mutters bitterly that it's killing them all slowly, turning fighters into stumbling drunks. The debate rages in whispers, but no one stops drinking, not even the medics. Later, a surgeon strides in, his white coat stained and reeking of spirits. He's clearly been drinking too, though his hands are steady as he begins a more serious operation on a man with shrapnel in his chest. "More vodka," he orders, and assistants pour it both into the wound and down the man's throat. The soldier screams, then passes out. The surgeon keeps working. You turn away, swallowing hard. Historians still argue whether such practices were desperation or ingenuity. Was vodka a poor substitute for real medicine, or a symbol of resilience in the face of scarcity? You don't have the answer. All you know is that it kept you stitched, bandaged, and still breathing. When night falls, you're released back to the trench. Your arm throbs, but the flask eases it. Vasily greets you with a crooked grin, raising his own bottle. See, the drink heals everything. You laugh, though not as easily as before. You've seen too much in that tent to fully believe the joke. Yet later, when the pain spikes, you drink deeply, clutching the flask like a talisman. You tell yourself it's medicine. The line between truth and lie is blurred, but at this point, you don't care. As you drift toward uneasy sleep, you remember the silent soldier whose flask slipped from his fingers. You wonder if he believed the vodka would save him too. You press your own flask to your chest, whispering, "Not yet, not me." The drink burns down your throat one last time, and you surrender to dreams half medicine, half poison, fully yours. The snow has stopped, but the cold lingers like a curse. You crouch in the trench, scribbling on a scrap of paper by the weak light of a lantern. The paper is dirty, creased, smudged with fingerprints. You can hardly hold the pencil steady. Your hand trembles from the wound stitched in the medical tent and from the vodka buzzing through your veins. Still, you write. Letters home are rationed like everything else, but tonight you feel the pull of memory, of family, dearest. You begin, though your words wobble. You want to say you're strong, that you're holding steady, that victory feels close, but the truth drips out differently. Your sentences lean crooked. Your handwriting sprawls like barbed wire. You pause often, swigging vodka from your flask, trying to steady yourself. Instead, the drink makes your letters blur on the page. Ink smears beneath your palm, as if the words themselves are too ashamed to stand. Historians often note that soldiers' letters were censored, scrubbed of fear and despair. But the smears, the crooked lines, the misspellings, those slipped past the censors. They revealed more than words could. Some families back home kept those letters as treasures, not realizing how much vodka guided the pen. You wonder if your family will notice the stains, the shaky handwriting, the faint smell of alcohol soaked into the paper. You write of warmth you don't feel, of food you don't eat, of laughter that doesn't come easily. You promise to return soon, though the words ring hollow even to your own ears. You tell your mother you are healthy, though your toes ache with frostbite. You tell your wife you are brave, though you nearly cried during the last bombardment. You tell your brother to drink a toast for you, though you've already drunk enough for both. There's a quirky detail about letters from the front. Some soldiers sprinkled vodka on the paper before sealing it, believing the scent would carry their spirit home. You've heard of men dipping the corner of the page into their flask, then sending it off. You try it now, wetting the edge of your letter with a drop. It leaves a faint stain, darker than ink. You smile at the absurdity, whispering, "So you'll know me by smell," Vasily writes beside you, muttering curses when his pencil breaks. He takes a sip between each line, his handwriting devolving into scribbles. "My wife will think I've gone stupid," he laughs. You laugh too, though you know your own letter looks no better. Sergei, on the other hand, refuses to drink while writing. His lines are neat, careful, full of poetic flourishes. You envy him, but also pity him. How can he write clearly in this place? As the night deepens, you fold your paper carefully, though it's smudged and damp. You slide it into an envelope, sealing it with spit and a silent prayer. The commissar will collect it tomorrow, though you know half the words will never reach home. Still, writing eases the ache in your chest. For a few minutes, letters more honest or more delusional. Did it loosen tongues enough to admit despair, or did it fuel false bravado, exaggerated promises of strength? Reading your letter, you see both. You promised return, promised health, promised victory, all lies. But you also admitted your longing, your hunger, your need. The drink blurred the line between confession and deception. Later, as the lantern dims, you read your letter aloud softly, as if sending it by voice instead of paper. The words slur on your tongue, but they feel alive. You imagine your wife hearing them, laughing at your crooked lines, maybe even forgiving them. The vision makes your chest ache, so you drink again to soften it. A comrade nearby rips up his letter, tossing scraps into the snow. "No point," he mutters. "They won't believe it anyway." You shake your head, clutching your envelope tighter. Even if your words are lies, even if they never arrive, the act of writing matters. It reminds you that you're still human, not just a body in the mud. Here's another lesser-known truth. Some soldiers used vodka to barter for paper or pencils. Supplies were scarce, but men would trade precious drink just to scrawl a few lines to loved ones. You once gave up half a ration for 2 sheets of paper. At the time, you regretted it bitterly. Tonight, holding your letter, you realize it was worth it. As you settle back against the trench wall, flask in hand, you whisper a final line to yourself, "I will come home." You don't write it down. It feels too fragile for paper. Instead, you let the vodka carry it through your blood. A private vow between you and the drink. The lantern flickers out. You tuck the letter under your coat, close your eyes, and dream of hands opening it weeks from now, tracing your smeared words, smelling the faint sting of spirits. Whether they believe the lies or hear the truth between lines, you don't know. You just hope they'll read it and remember you as more than a staggering shadow in the snow. Morning arrives like a hangover stretched across the horizon. The snow is dull gray, the sky a sheet of iron, and every sound seems muffled, as though the world itself is too tired to echo. You sit in the trench, letter tucked in your coat, flask already half empty. Your arm throbs from stitches, your stomach growls from hunger, but your mind is wrapped in cotton. Days are bleeding together, and the vodka is the only thing tying them apart. You try to remember yesterday's battle. The Germans attacked at dawn, or was it dusk? You remember firing, shouting, stumbling, but the details dissolve when you reach for them. Instead of clarity, you see flashes. The snow lit up with fire, Vasily screaming, Sergei laughing like a madman, your own hands trembling on the rifle. You drank before, during, after. Now, when you try to piece it together, it all melts into one blur. Historians write about this phenomenon, how vodka made battles indistinguishable from one another. Soldiers described the war not as a series of events, but as one endless smear of fire, snow, and drink. Dates lost meaning, places blurred, victories and defeats felt the same. Was it courage or confusion? Even scholars still argue. For you, it's just exhaustion. You can't tell one offensive from the last. You can barely tell what month it is. A comrade nudges you. Do you remember the river crossing? He asks. You frown. Did you cross a river? You see flashes of water, black and churning. Men wading waist deep, rifles raised above their heads. Or maybe you're remembering a story someone else told. You laugh weakly. Of course, you lie. He laughs too, though his eyes tell you he doesn't believe you. Maybe he doesn't remember either. The vodka is both culprit and cure. It erases details, but makes the erasure bearable. You drink, forget, drink again. Without it, maybe you'd remember too much: the screams, the frostbitten toes, the faces of men who didn't make it. With it, you remember nothing at all. Maybe that's mercy. Maybe it's poison. There's a quirky detail about the Red Army. Some soldiers marked time not by calendars, but by bottles. That was 3 flasks ago, they'd say, when asked about a particular battle. You've caught yourself doing the same. Last week's raid, 2 flasks. The offensive, where you fell in the crater. For it's ridiculous, yet it makes more sense than counting days. Vodka is the only measure that matters anymore. Today's orders are the same as always. Prepare to advance. You clean your rifle mechanically, swigging between motions. Your hands move without thought. The metal gleams faintly, though your vision wavers. Around you, comrades mutter the same half-jokes they always do. Another glorious day, Sergei says with a smirk. Another glorious hangover, Vasily adds. You all laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's familiar. When the attack begins, you move forward in a haze. Snow, mud, smoke your boots, sink, your rifle jolts, your flask digs into your ribs. You fire when others fire, reload when they reload, shout when they shout. The Germans return fire, but even the bullets feel blurred, less real. You stumble, fall, rise again, half convinced you're dreaming. You drink mid-battle, tipping the flask to your lips between volleys. It steadies your nerves, but fogs your aim. You think you see shapes, retreating Germans, fleeing, but you're not sure. Maybe it's smoke, maybe it's comrades. You fire anyway. Historians still argue whether vodka made soldiers more dangerous to themselves than to the enemy. Accounts exist of friendly fire, of men shooting at shadows, of confusion amplified by drink. Others insist the Red Army's reckless charges, fueled by vodka, broke German lines by sheer momentum. Both could be true. You live in the contradiction every day. By evening, the offensive ends. Victory, defeat. You're not sure. You slump into the trench, chest heaving, snow clinging to your coat. Vasily sits beside you, face pale, flask empty. He mutters, What day is it? You shrugged. Neither of you knows. Neither of you cares. Later, as darkness settles, you try to write another letter. You want to tell your wife about the battle, but what would you say? We attacked, we retreated, we drank. That's every day. You scratch out a few lines, then stop, staring at the paper until it blurs. Instead, you take another drink, letting the words dissolve into silence. Here's another small truth. Soldiers often joked they would only remember the war through vodka. We'll tell our grandchildren, they said, but we'll need a bottle to do it. You wonder if that's true. If you survive, will you remember anything without a drink in hand? Or will the war itself be one long, drunken dream? As you lie back in the trench, flask on your chest, you whisper to yourself, it all melts together. You close your eyes, hearing distant shells, smelling smoke, tasting vodka. Tomorrow will be the same. Another battle, another drink, another blur. Time itself has drowned in the bottle, and you're floating on its surface, too tired to swim. The trench is quiet tonight, quieter than you like. The snow muffles sound, and the wind has paused as though holding its breath. You sit huddled with your comrades, flask in hand, but the laughter that usually bubbles up is absent. Everyone looks tired, worn thinner than the paper your letters are written on. Even Sergei, who can always be counted on for a joke, stares silently at the ground. Something is shifting, not in the snow, but in the spirit of the company. You feel it too. The vodka still warms you, still burns in your chest, but it doesn't feel the same. The flask is lighter than ever, and so is the mood. Orders have grown harsher, punishments sharper. A soldier caught sleeping at his post last week was beaten in front of everyone, not sent to a penal battalion, not docked rations, just beaten until he could barely crawl. You remember the look on his face, not fear, not pain, but shame. And yet, 2 hours later, he begged for vodka to dull the bruises. Discipline is cracking like ice underfoot. Men drink more than their rations, sneaking into supply wagons, trading gear, even stealing from each other. Trust phrase. You've seen fists fly over half a flask, curses shouted louder than German artillery. Officers try to stamp it out, but you've seen their hands shaking too. They lecture by day and drink by night. The hypocrisy is so obvious, it no longer feels worth mentioning. Historians write that by 1943, vodka had become both a tool and a trap. The Red Army issued it to keep morale high, but too much led to breakdowns in order. Some units grew reckless, stumbling into danger. Others grew sluggish, men too drunk to march at dawn. Scholars still debate whether it was more dangerous to give soldiers vodka or to take it away. You don't need debate, you live the paradox. Tonight, you hear whispers of men planning to desert. Not across enemy lines, that's suicide, but to slip into the woods, vanish into the snow, find villages where they can barter vodka for bread. Here's a quirky detail you recall. Some soldiers swore vodka kept them warm enough to march all night during retreats. Others insisted it made them collapse faster, tricking the body until it gave out. Tonight, you're caught between both. One moment, you feel invincible, trudging faster. The next, your knees buckle, and you nearly collapse. You're not sure if the drink is saving you or killing you. As the column halts to regroup, you collapse against a tree, chest heaving. The snow around you is littered with dropped gear helmets, boots, even rifles, abandoned in desperation. You clutch your flask tighter, whispering, not this, never this. You take another swig, though it's almost empty now. The last drops cling stubbornly to the bottom. The commissar strides past, barking orders, pistol in hand. His face is red, breath steaming. He shouts about cowardice, about shame, about duty, But even he sways slightly, and you know he's been drinking too. His words don't sting the way they should. They wash over you like snowmelt, cold but fleeting. You watch him stumble, and you think the whole army is retreating together, drunk from top to bottom. Historians still debate whether retreats were moments of collapse or resilience. Did falling back mean weakness, or was it the only way to survive for another fight? You don't know the answer. All you know is that without vodka, you might have collapsed miles ago. With it, you're staggering onward, half dead, half alive, still moving as night falls. The company digs shallow trenches on new ground. You collapse into yours, arms trembling, body aching. Your flask is finally empty. You shake it desperately, tipping it upside down, hoping for one last drop. Nothing. The hollow clink echoes louder than the shells. You press the flask to your chest anyway, whispering, "Tomorrow. There'll be more tomorrow." Sleep comes in jagged bursts. You dream of marching in circles, chasing the same horizon, clutching an endless flask that never runs dry. You wake shivering, teeth chattering, realizing the dream is kinder than reality. You roll over, snow crunching under you, and close your eyes again. Tomorrow, there will be more orders, more shells, more retreats, and tomorrow, you'll clutch your flask tighter than your rifle again. The retreat leaves you hollow, like a building stripped of its beams. When dawn finally crawls over the snow, you feel more like a shadow than a soldier. Your flask is empty, worse than hunger, worse than frostbite. You sit with your back against the trench wall, licking the rim of the metal, trying to taste even a ghost of the drink. Nothing, just the faint temps of metal and shame around you. Men grumble and barter. The morning has turned into a market of desperation. One man offers his wool cap for a half cup. Another shows off a pair of boots, soles barely intact, in exchange for 3 gulps. You listen, stomach twisting. You have nothing left but your rifle, and you're not ready to trade that, not yet. But you know if someone waved a full bottle in front of you, you'd consider it. Vodka has become the currency of survival. Food, clothing, even tobacco are measured against it. Historians note how entire frontline economies sprouted from vodka rations, soldiers using them as coins when money was worthless. Was it practical, or was it madness? Scholars still debate. For you, it feels inevitable. Bread fills your stomach for a day. Vodka fills your veins for an hour and convinces you to keep living. That illusion is worth any price. A comrade approaches Anton, gaunt as a scarecrow, boots tied with string. He holds up a strip of dried fish, barely enough for 2 bites. "Half your flask," he says. You laugh bitterly, shaking the empty metal. He sighs, realizing you're as broke as he is, and slumps beside you. He eats the fish alone, chewing slowly, while you stare at his hands and imagine trading your coat, your gloves, even your dignity for a taste. Later, Vasily limps over with a grin. He dangles a half-full flask, like a jewel. "1 swig for your socks," he offers. You freeze. Your socks are all that stand between your feet and frostbite's grip, but your throat burns with craving. Your hands tremble. You weigh the choice, teeth clenched. At last, you peeled the socks off, shoving them into his hands. He tosses you the flask, and you drink deeply. The fire spreads through your chest, and for a moment, you feel whole again. You don't even care that your toes ache in the cold. Historians still argue whether such trades were signs of resilience, men adapting to survive, or collapse men sacrificing health for drink. You know it's both. The vodka steadies your mind enough to march, but it strips you bare 1 garment at a time. Socks today, boots tomorrow. maybe even your rifle someday. There's a quirky detail you remember hearing. Some soldiers carved notches into their flasks, tallying trades like ledger books. 1 notch for a pair of gloves, 2 for tobacco, 3 for bread. You glance at your own flask, smooth and unmarked, and wonder what its invisible tally would show. Too many, you think, far too many. That night, the company gathers around a weak fire. The bartering continues, boots for cigarettes, rations for sips. The air buzzes with desperation. One soldier, drunk already, offers his last photograph of his family for a swallow. Another accepts, pockets the photo, downs the drink, and laughs. You look away, heart sinking. Even memories are for sale now. The commissar tries to intervene, shouting about discipline, about dignity. But his words fall flat when someone points out the flask in his own coat pocket. Laughter erupts, bitter and sharp. He scowls, mutters, curses, then walks away. Authority means little when everyone is trading the same poison. As the fire crackles, you sip from your reclaimed drink, savoring it, but your feet throb in the cold, raw and unprotected. You wiggle your toes, half fearing you won't feel them tomorrow. Still, you don't regret the trade. The vodka warms you in a way socks never could. At least, that's what you tell yourself. Historians often ask, did vodka keep the Red Army standing? Or did it hollow them out until nothing was left? Watching your comrades trade boots, coats, memories for a swallow, you realize the answer is both. The drink keeps you alive, one day at a time, even as it ensures you'll never last the long march. When the fire dies and men curl into sleep, you clutch your flask, lighter than ever, and whisper, "Tomorrow I'll trade less. Tomorrow I'll hold on," but you know tomorrow you'll trade again. Out here, everything has a price, and vodka is the only currency that matters. You close your eyes, bare feet pressed against frozen earth, chest warmed by liquid fire. The war roars around you, but all you hear is the soft clink of your flask, the heartbeat of survival and surrender at once. The night passes without much sleep. Your feet ache, bare inside your boots, the frost gnawing at your toes, where socks once gave you at least the illusion of protection. You lie curled against the trench wall, flask cradled against your chest like a child might hold a toy. It is lighter than you wish, but the weight of it comforts you anyway. In the morning, when you tip it back and a thin ribbon of fire slides into your throat, you feel whole again, if only for a heartbeat. But then comes silence. Not the silence of snow or the pause before artillery. The silence inside you, where words used to live. You realize, sitting in the half-light, that you can't remember what it felt like to be sober. Not really. You try to picture a morning without vodka, and the image doesn't come. Instead, you picture yourself trembling, screaming, clawing for the bottle. You laugh bitterly, shaking your head. "The Germans don't own me," you whisper. "The bottle does." It's a confession you've avoided, but it stalks you now. You look at your comrades and see the same truth etched on their faces. Vasily with his stolen socks, Sergei with his wild laughter, Anton gnawing fish bones, in silence all of them orbiting the same sun. Vodka isn't just a ration anymore. It's the center of your lives. The war is a backdrop, a noisy distraction. The real battle is between you and the flask. Historians sometimes argue whether Soviet soldiers were truly addicted, or whether vodka was just a tool of survival, a crutch in impossible conditions. Some memoirs claim men quit easily after the war, returning to farms and families as though the drink had never ruled them. Others recall veterans who couldn't put it down, who lived the rest of their lives with bottles in their pockets. Scholars still debate which story is truer. You don't need debate. You know the truth in your bones. The bottle has conquered you more completely than the enemy ever could. You try to imagine laying it down, pouring it out, marching forward without it. The thought terrifies you more than artillery, more than frostbite. You'd rather face bullets than the emptiness that comes when the fire fades from your blood. You whisper again, this time softer. I can't stop. The words taste like shame and truth all at once. Later that day, the company marches again. Snow crunches beneath your bare feet, inside the boots, pain stabbing with every step. You take a swig, wincing as your flask runs drier, but the warmth spreads anyway. Around you, men stumble like ghosts, rifles dragging, eyes glassy. You wonder if the Germans, watching from their lines, see you as soldiers or as drunkards staggering through snow. Maybe both. A curious detail surfaces in your mind. Propaganda posters once painted Soviet soldiers as Iron Men, sober and disciplined, heroes of the motherland. You laugh at the image now. If only those posters showed the truth, mud-streaked men swaying like reeds, bottles clutched tighter than rifles. Maybe the people back home would understand what victory really costs. Or maybe they'd despair. Either way, you know they'll never see it. History prefers heroes, not staggering addicts. That night, after another skirmish you barely remember, you sit by the fire and listen to Sergei rant. The Germans fight us with bullets. The vodka fights us from inside. Which enemy is worse? He demands, eyes blazing. No one answers. The silence says everything. You sip quietly, ashamed, because you know your choice. You'll fight the Germans only as long as the flask is full. Without it, you'd already have surrendered. You recall the old man in the village, his sharp eyes cutting through you. You drink too much. You brushed it off then, but his words gnaw now. You wonder what your wife would say if she saw you here, slumped against the trench wall, letters smeared with drink, body kept upright by fire in a bottle. Would she recognize you? Or would she weep at the stranger vodka has carved? Historians still debate whether such self-awareness existed among soldiers, or if it is hindsight written into memoirs. You smile at the irony. Here you are, aware to the bone, and it doesn't change a thing. The drink still rules you. Awareness is just another layer of despair. There's a quirky detail Sergei adds to his rant. One day, after the war, we'll march in victory parades, drunk as ever. The people will cheer, never knowing the real reason we survived. You laugh, but the laugh breaks into a cough. He's right. If you make it to that parade, the flask will still be in your pocket, hidden under medals you don't deserve. As the fire dies, you lean back, eyes heavy, chest buzzing with the last of your ration. You whisper once more, this time not as confession, but as prayer. Let me outlive the bottle. The words hang in the night, fragile and foolish. Deep down, you know you won't. You close your eyes, flask pressed to your heart. Around you, comrades snore, mutter, or drink in silence. The war continues, but inside you, the battle is already lost. The war ends, not with fanfare, but with silence that feels wrong. After years of shells, rifles, screams, and drunken songs, the stillness is too heavy to bear. You march into a city in ruins, Berlin. Though it hardly matters the streets are littered with rubble and smoke. The enemy is broken, the flags are raised, and the commanders declare victory. You should feel triumph. Instead, you feel emptiness. You limp along with the others. Uniform tattered, boots split, flask clinking against your ribs. Your toes are numb from frostbite, your stomach shrunken from years of hunger, but your hand still reaches for the bottle. Victory doesn't change that. You tilt it back and let the fire burn through your chest, the same ritual that carried you from the first trench to the last. The war is over, but the war inside you marches on. Around you, comrades shout, laugh, weep. Some raise rifles in salute, others collapse in exhaustion. Sergei throws his cap in the air, shouting, "We won, brothers." Vasily slumps against a wall, clutching his flask tighter than his wound. You laugh weakly, lifting your own bottle. "To victory," you mutter. Though the word tastes hollow, historians describe these parades with awe, an army battered but unbroken, marching into history. But they rarely mention the bottles clutched in pockets, the glazed eyes behind medals. They don't describe the staggering steps, the slurred songs, the smell of spirits masking the stench of death. Scholars still debate, did vodka win the war, numbing soldiers enough to keep them fighting, or did it simply hollow them out until nothing remained but shells of men? You know the answer. Both. You stumble past a crowd of civilians, their faces thin and wary. Some cheer, others watch silently. You see a child point at your flask, just like the boy in the village months ago. His mother pulls him close, whispering something you can't hear. You feel a flush of shame, but you drink anyway. What else is there? There's a quirky detail you remember. After victory, some units were rewarded with extra vodka, handed out in celebration. Barrels tapped, cups raised, toasts shouted. The state gave you drink to mark the end, the same way it gave you drink to mark the beginning. A circle closed in fire and frost. You drink deeply, joining the cheer, though the taste is the same as always burning. Numbing, empty. That night, you sit alone, watching smoke curl into the sky. The city is rubble, the war is over, and yet you feel no lighter. You clutch your flask and realize it's more faithful than any comrade, more constant than any order. It was there in the first march, in the raids, in the retreats, in the letters smeared with ink and drink. It's here now, in victory. You whisper to yourself, "Old lover," and the thought makes you shiver. Historians still argue whether veterans carried this addiction home, or whether peace sobered them. You wonder which story you'll belong to. Will you return to your family and lay the bottle down? Or will you carry it into the fields, the kitchens, the bedrooms, forever chasing the fire that carried you through the front? The question gnaws, but the answer feels already written. You take another drink, and the fire answers for you. The celebration around you swells songs, toasts, laughter. You join in half-heartedly, raising your flask, but your mind drifts elsewhere. You think of the old man's words, of Sergei's rants, of Vasily's bloodied grin. You think of the hallucinations, the barters, the trades that stripped you bare. You think of the frostbite gnawing your toes, of the stitches soaked in vodka, of the letters smeared with drink. And you realize the war has carved you hollow, leaving space only for the bottle. You lie back against the rubble, close your eyes, and let the sounds of victory blur into silence. The flask rests on your chest, warm from your hand. You whisper one last vow, "I'll survive this too." You don't know if it's true. You don't know if survival means life, or just another day with the bottle. But you whisper it anyway, because that's what you've always done. The war is over. Your war is not. And now, as the fires of war dim and the echoes fade, you let yourself breathe more slowly. The battlefield, once alive with thunder and smoke, softens into memory. You picture snow falling quietly over the trenches, covering scars in a blanket of white. You picture soldiers no longer shouting, no longer stumbling, but sleeping, finally sleeping. Your body loosens as you imagine setting down the rifle, unbuckling the coat, slipping off the boots that carried you too far. The flask, too, grows lighter in your hand, as if even it has grown tired. For the first time, you allow the silence to comfort instead of threaten. The stillness is not emptiness, is rest. Historians may debate what vodka meant, whether it was poison or salvation, but you don't need the answer tonight. Tonight, you can let the questions drift away like smoke. You can picture warmth without needing to drink it, laughter without needing to force it. You can see yourself walking not through snow, but through grass, green and alive, the kind that bends softly beneath your boots. Let yourself imagine home, a door opening, a table waiting, hands reaching for yours without judgment. The war recedes behind you, a shadow that cannot follow into the light. For once, there is no march, no retreat, no raid, only quiet, only rest. So breathe deeply now. Let the cold fade. Let the fire dim. The story has carried you through frost and fear, but here, at the end, you can let go. The night is yours. The dreams are yours. And tomorrow, you'll wake lighter than you were before. Sleep well, traveler. You've made it through. Sweet dreams.